Welcome to Positive Perspectives, a podcast dedicated to sharing powerful stories that present opportunities to grow from lived experiences. Each expert guest brings a lived experience that has some meaning or learning or just sparks some sort of transformation, deepens understanding, or ignites growth. Today, I'm joined by Neeta Sharma. Neeta is a leadership coach, facilitator, and broadcaster who believes that having inclusive cultures in organizations need to be accompanied by strong alignment between organizational values, strategic objectives, business outcomes, leadership, and individuals. What drives Neeta is her passion for learning and finding out what is possible for here and for others. Hi, Nita. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Marie. That was a very lovely introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're going to be sharing today.
What I'm sharing is the power of intuition and how it can guide you and enable you to follow things when others who might be heckling around you going, no, it's not possible, or you can't do this. The second part is the inner knowing, the inner purpose that you have when you decide that you're at a crossroad and you think, which way should I go? Should I go that way or this way? And what I call this is designing your purpose in life, really. That's the second part that I want to be bringing together.
Thank you. That sounds very thought-provoking, actually, because we overthink things. So when my intuition says something, I kind of overthink it until I've dulled that voice and I'm going somewhere else where possibly I'm not feeling very comfortable
Mm.
navigating or going on a journey, which probably is not my journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. The first time I can think of this is a long, long, long time, but it's such a pivotal point in my life. I just finished doing my A levels and I didn't get the grade that I wanted, and I was determined that I did. I was determined, and I said to my school, "Look, can you ask the board to reassess my paper, remark it?" And they said, "Oh, no, 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 it's not possible." And I said, "Look, I really think I've passed." And they said, "Oh, but you'll have to pay." So I said, "I will pay and I want you to do it." Anyway, long story short, they awarded me an A level pass. So I was right. That created a whole new opening for me, which allowed me to go to university. From there on, I thought I need to start trusting my intuition and the inner knowing that was there with me, and that complete belief that said, "Yep, you got it. You got to go for it." And the second sort of occasion it bumped up against me was when my parents were going, "You're now back from uni. It's marriage time." And I said, "No, I'm not ready for this. This isn't something that I want." And I think I might have been about 23 then, and thinking, you know what? I need to create a life, a path which is defined by me, as opposed to the one that's being laid in front of me, which was you come home and you get married and you have children. And I thought, that's too boring for me. So therefore, I persuaded my parents not to hassle me and not to say, "Oh, when you're going to get married." So I was going to buy my own place and leave home without being married, because that was where the general norm was. You leave home because someone else is going to take care of you. During that time, the other event for me that was really important, I started my career as a graduate trainee in housing management. And I loved it, but I also hated it because of the racism and the sexism that I'd encountered, not personally, but what I observed around me. Anyway, a post came up in outreach worker for the Asian community.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, a job that I'd love to do, because it meant that I was going with the tide rather than against the tide, being in this graduate trainee scheme. So I abandoned my graduate training and decided that I wanted to go and work as an outreach worker for the Asian community. And I remember naively saying to the interviewer, oh, well, I'd do it for nothing. The salary didn't matter. And what guided me was inner purpose, that I wanted to add value to people from my own community. It wasn't something that I was involved in growing up. However, it was something that I want to. And from there, I went into jobs around equity and diversity, sitting on one board in particular around creating a residential home for the Asian community. And at that time, this is in the early 80s, there wasn't nothing like that. Everybody said, oh, you look after your own, don't you? You don't need elderly homes for the Asian community. And we said, no, there is a need. And as a result of it, we created the first residential elderly community for the Asian community. It's now a sort of $1 million housing association. So from that small root, it grew from there. I got a bit tired of working full time, and there was an inner drive that was going, this is so boring. You know, you need to do something different. And I had this brainwave idea of going part-time or having 2 jobs. And I got a couple of jobs. And then another job came up at the BBC, and it was a part-time job. I would say, Marie, I took a leap of faith, and I had such conviction.
Yeah.
Again, guided by my intuition, that said, this is right for you. And I remember my director at the organization, he said, are you sure? You know, you're giving up full-time employment. And I said, yeah, got a leap of faith. I'm sure in the other half I can create something else for myself. I landed the job at the BBC for 2.5 days, and then went about looking for some consultancies that I could work with. And I landed on another one, which was great as a training ground for me in organizational development, leadership, and equity. So that was really built around my vision of what I wanted to do. And very earlier on, a couple of my values, which are still with me today, is independence and autonomy. I didn't want to be hemmed in. And in fact, 4 years later, I decided to take another leap of faith and go independent. I had a secure job, gave up my substantive contract, and to go and start working as an independent. I was lucky that I had some people who really believed in me and said, okay, we'll give you some training programs. And so I learned to do lots of things like time management or customer care, or I'd do anything at the beginning part of it as I was setting up, and just creating a niche for myself in terms of what I wanted to have an impact on, and still honoring my values around equity and diversity and making a difference. So I worked with probably loads of global companies until I came to another crossroad, whereby 2008, by then my husband and I formed our own consultancy, and the bottom dropped out because of the crash. We lost quite a lot of our big clients. I would say for about a year or so, I just floundered, thinking, what do I do? So out of desperation, I took a job in an organization, a large consultancy leadership organization. And I would say out of all my working life, that was the time I hated the most. There was so much misalignment. I wasn't politically savvy working with people in the organization, and I wasn't prepared for people taking credit for the work that I was doing. Although I was a subject matter expert, I don't think I always managed myself. It was probably the first time it came home to me, the differentiation that exists. And this was an organization that says men go up to the 10th floor and speak to their leaders about the work they do, and women don't do that. And I don't know, white women do it, but maybe Black or Asian women don't do it so much.
Yeah.
Leaving the organization wasn't an issue for me. Off I went, I left, and I thought, oh my God, what do I do? And painful. It was a painful time. However, an old friend of mine said, you know, you're really good at listening. Why don't you go and get yourself trained as a coach? my life completely went into a different path. The world opened up. One of the things I always say to my clients, sometimes when you're immersed in something, you can't see above, you can't see the light.
Yeah.
You think you're in a well. And in a way, you've got to have hope that
Yeah.
there is something. I'm resourceful enough. I'm determined enough that things will emerge for me. And sometimes you do go down cul-de-sacs. I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And other times you thrive. And the word thrive is something that I always ask myself, am I thriving in this?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's been in balance and sometimes it's been out of kilter. I think my husband will tell you a few times where he thinks I spent too long at the office. As I've got older, my sense of determination has been mellowed. Over the years, I learned that just by pushing doesn't mean you get. And the last thing I would say is that you always got people on your wing
Yeah.
supporting you, and you listen to the voice of the people who support you. That you could also listen to the critics and say, okay, is there any value? No, put it away.
Yeah.
Today, apart from doing some coaching and leadership work, I think what gives me a big buzz is doing my podcast and making things interesting for other people to listen to. Actually, I want to inspire people. I'd love the idea that people take away one thought from their conversation and what they hear. Sometimes you just need to implement that one thing
Yeah.
that creates the domino effect.
Thank you. That's very comprehensive in terms of the journey that you've taken. And the highlights of that journey for me was this adventure, the being courageous and to be independent, embrace that journey and go with it, regardless of what may have happened or not happened. What was also interesting around that was some of them you'd actually designed and you had a certain amount of control of,
Mm.
and some of them you totally didn't. But you went with them because you thought that leap of faith, you just went for it, and it worked out in the end.
For me, there's everything is around timing and being open to things coming your way. That's the other thing that I think I want to tell people. You have to be open to allow things to emerge.
Yeah,
If you want a shift, and nothing happens quickly. And
yeah,
sometimes things happen without you knowing that they're happening because we can't see. We
yeah.
can only see in front of us. We don't know how life plans for us. And sometimes occasionally get curveballs as well. And it's also about being where you need to be.
There's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom that you've illustrated to us today that really resonates with me in part because there's certain elements of being independent, and that's one thing I love about my life is that I can be independent and I can make the choices for
Mm,
my life and go with them. The whole thing that you were saying, I didn't want to get married at that point. I didn't want to do
mm,
this. But these things happened because it was about your timing. Everyone has their own timing. My
mm.
timing is not your timing or anyone else's. It's my timing. And appreciating that and accepting that is very important. And that saves you a lot of stress and anxiety and worry and everything else.
Yeah, it's so important that you're living your life consciously the way you want to. And I know we have to take other people into consideration. We're part of a community and a
Yeah.
group, but ultimately we have to live in our own skin. I don't live with other people 24/7, so I can't escape from me. So I got to find a way of living with myself with harmony.
Yeah.
And even though some of that time there is discourse and conflict, which obviously I experience, I live with myself 24/7. If I can't do that, then how do I really expect other people to do that?
Yeah. As you were saying that, I kind of thought about a situation where we can beat ourselves up about doing things or not being like this or not having that. And we need to think about how we can be more empathetic to ourselves, how we can be more
Yes.
compassionate for ourselves, because the things that we may be striving for may be not for us.
That is so true. And I think Jenny Garrett said that in one of her podcasts: be you and own your own power.
Yeah. With that, it would be great for you to give us one sort of takeaway that you'd like to tell our listeners today.
Befriend yourself. Learn to be gentle and self compassionate to yourself,
Yeah.
starting with I rather than anywhere else.
That's a golden nugget of a takeaway for everybody
Mm,
because we can only be our best selves if we do that. And we are our reward, if you like, because if we don't look after this, who will? And then if we don't have this,
absolutely.
there's not much that we can have. There's not much we can give. If we can't give from ourselves in a really strong position,
Mm,
then we won't have much to give anybody else.
absolutely.
Really enjoyed the values and how we saw that peppered throughout your life, and also intuition, how important that is to go with your instincts, but also to add a bit of spice to just jump off the cliff, if you like, adventure, and
Mm,
also that leap of faith.
yeah,
Very thought-provoking.
yeah,
Thank you so
lovely.
much, Nita.
Thank you, Marie. And I hope the listeners enjoy what they're hearing.